Now, let's just talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. So we are week 4, if you didn't remember, we're week 4, which is quite amazing because that's, I think about this in the 12-week span, and so it's only 2 more weeks and we're halfway finished. So it goes by very quickly. Now we have been looking at English as an international language, and that was our online component. Then we looked at how languages are learned, and then the community of the classroom. This week, we're now focusing on curriculum, syllabus, and lesson planning. And why do you think we're focusing on lesson planning? Yeah, because we have to, yeah. And also because we are preparing for this assessment task, which is a lesson plan, right? And one of the reasons why we're building up to this is we're really looking at understanding these concepts. We talk about communicative competence, but knowing that when we build communicative competence in our students, we're focusing on both meaning and form. So we're looking at the skills, but we're also looking at grammar and forms. But the idea is that if we understand all of these concepts, then we can apply them to our own pedagogical approaches. And then we can also adapt this for our own teaching context. That's a huge part of this unit, is knowing that I will model different ways and different approaches, and that's one of the things that, as I told you before, I will try to model what I would do in a classroom. So as we learn about pedagogy, I will actually do the types of things that I would do in a classroom, but also knowing that that's not always appropriate for all contexts. So one of the things to reflect on is how is this being used, and how might I modify it for my own teaching context? How will I modify it for the various learners in my classroom? You would have read something this week about young learners. So tell me, how many of you in here are planning to teach young children? So I'm talking like primary or elementary school. Okay, Angie, right? So a few people. So the idea that the way that we approach teaching and assessing language might be slightly different for working with adults compared to young children, to adolescents. Okay, so understanding these different contexts. So this is really the first part of this unit. So where we're going. Next week we have another online unit, which is metacognition. Does anyone know what metacognition is?
Thinking about thinking.
Yes. Okay, well done. Thinking about thinking. So what does this look like in TESOL? And how do we encourage this as teachers? Then week 6 is principles of learning and assessment. So this is where we start really tackling assessment. Now, I do have to let you know that that week I'm not going to be here. So we have the lovely Dr. Kim Dang who will be here. But that also means that I will still be available on email and so on. But I will not be here week 6, but class will go on as normal. And then we'll be looking at the different macro skills. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing in regards to both the strategies that we might use in teaching it, as well as assessment. And we also look at vocabulary and grammar. So this is this will go by very, very quickly, given that I won't see you in week 6, won't be until week 8. But I did want to let you know that as we prepare for the assessment task, which is due September 1st. Obviously, you knew that one. September 1st. I'm here. I leave on September 1st. Okay. So I'm going to be in Europe presenting at a conference. And that means that I leave that day. So if I'm going to be leaving that day, that means you have to be a little bit organized, which I'm sure you all will be. And if you do have any questions, you need to let me know beforehand. The other thing is that I know that at this time things happen in our life, and we need extensions and so on. And I'm usually very, willing to give these extensions if you have a proper, reason why. And particularly because I think the key is that I want you to do the best that you can on this. But you also have to be prepared. So start working now. And that's one of the things I want you to do this week, is really come up with a timeline of what you need to do now and tomorrow and the next day to make sure that you get things ready. And maybe have the assignment done in time so that if you have any burning questions, we can either meet up in week 5 on campus, or we can email back and forth. Okay, so make sure you're organized, because I'm happy to give you feedback, but you'll have to get organized week 5, all right? The other thing is you're making some really lovely connections with one another, so you might think about getting a little study group together. And we'll talk more about this when we talk about assessment, but that idea of getting feedback on things, getting people's perspectives on it before you send it in, okay? All right, so to get things started, we're gonna do a little activity, and it's called, oh, wrong one. Quiz trade, or more question trade. Has anybody heard of this? Yes? Okay. So the idea of this is everyone's going to get a card. Okay? And Mia, sorry. Mia has a card, I have a card, and I'm going to ask her a question. So why did you decide to become a teacher? And the answer is a question mark, meaning there's no specific answer. So she can just freely answer that question. Okay? And then she will ask me a question. And I think it's a more specific one. That's about how many countries in English, approximately how many countries is English the official second language? Okay. And if you don't know it, then she can help you because she already has the answer because the answer is on the key on the card. And then we do the trade. So quiz trade. So then we trade and we go to someone else. Now I know this is going to be very difficult, but that means that you have to get out of your chairs. Okay. So get out of your chairs. You'll get a card. So then you should go around to maybe like 10 different people. Okay, and then we're going to discuss more about why would we do an activity like this? Would we do an activity like this? And so on. But the idea is that some of this content comes from what you've read. So you're kind of learning and reviewing at the same time, plus thinking about how we might use this as a technique in our own classroom. All right, so first of all, stand up. All right, so I know you will probably ask the person next to you, and that's okay. So go ahead and begin. Go ahead, find someone, pair up, read your card, pressure the top, answer on the bottom. Ask that student, then they respond to you, they ask their question, trade, go find someone else. All right, begin. Why is this?
All right, ask one more person and then go ahead and go sit down. All right, go ahead and have a seat.
your students that you've taught or your future students that you will teach, how do you think they would respond to an activity like this? Okay, so do you think they like it? Do they like being active?
Yeah, especially the younger kids.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else? How do you think students that you've either taught or that you plan to teach would respond to an activity like this?
I think it will work well in such a group like adult group, but for the kids, it will be like they will be all chaos exactly. And I think they're just talking or like they're not really answering.
Yeah, it's kind of easily distracted.
Exactly.
So what would you do with that? How might you create some boundaries?
Make rules.
Make some rules, this is what we do, this is what's expected, this is what's not, what we should not
Checking on
do.
them.
Yeah.
Just walking near them, see what they do. So they would kind of be more serious.
Did that work with you when you were a child? See, I have one child who really wants to do the right thing, and the other one that actually, if they saw me walking by, they would try to do something a bit naughty just to get their attention. So, but yeah, I think part of it is thinking about, how would this work with different groups? So obviously this, is requiring some reading, so that might be difficult if you have young learners. Could you use pictures? So we use pictures. And they have to, so there's lots of different things. And this is the key, is that sometimes I think the best and most effective teachers hear or learn about something and you go, how can I change that just a little bit to really suit my context? And that's the thing that makes really good activities, because you're connecting it with the students that you know what they need, and you're kind of gleaning or taking these ideas and making appropriate for your context. And almost all things need to be somewhat kind of changed a little bit to suit the context. So in this activity, what language skills are being practiced here? Speaking, listening, reading. And that's the thing, is then you might think about how you add writing to it. Maybe there's something where, there's some questions and then they have to go write about the card that they end up with. Maybe it's a writing prompt. That question, they have to write something about it. So there's lots of different things you can think about. And so then the last question is more kind of reflective for you, thinking about your teaching context and how you might change it or adapt it. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to review and kind of think about some of the readings. So we had 2 articles, and then we had 2 chapters in a book. But as well, if you want to also discuss some of the readings that you had last week, if those were interesting and you had some things to talk about. So the idea about this is I've put some markers on your table, and thinking about one thing that you've learned from this week's reading. So you can kind of put some of your ideas on there, just on the tables. I'm only going to give you 5 minutes, so it's just like a quick brainstorm of thinking what was something that was new, that you learned, that you thought was a moment of, oh, interesting. Hopefully you had lots of moments of, oh, interesting. All right, so I want you to, at your tables, brainstorm some concepts, ideas, thoughts that you read about this week. All right, 5 minutes, go. Did everyone finish the roll? Yeah.